All right, continuing on with our example 2.1, we have made a frequency distribution chart and we have done our bar graph for the frequency distribution. Now number 3, we're going to construct a relative frequency distribution for this data. And again, I'm going to do this over in Excel. Let's pull the sheet up. Now here is my frequency distribution up here. The relative frequency distribution, I'm just going to add another column here, which I'm going to call relative frequency. And I need to expand column C here a little bit to make it fit. Let's go ahead and make this bold so it matches the rest of them. And all of these. Okay, so the frequency is the actual count of how many of a particular data point there actually is. So for the desktops, we actually counted 11 of them. The relative frequency is a percentage. What percent of the total was desktop computers? What percent of the total was laptops? And so the way we calculate the relative frequency is we're going to take our frequency and we're going to divide it by the total down here. So there was a use for this 50. Okay. Now one option we can do, we can try to do, let's see, 11 divided by 50. That's our frequency divided by our total. And it gives me November the 50th. All right, so this is not actually formatted correctly. All right, so I have cleared the contents out of here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this cell. I'm going to come down here where it says Format Cells. And we're going to turn this cell into a number because it was on date. And it's going to round to 2 decimal places. That's fine because remember I said it was a percent. And then we can just click OK. And then once again, I can try and put my formula in there, which was 11 divided by 50. And press enter, and now it gives me 0.22, which is 22% of the total. Desktops were 22% of the total. All right, let's go ahead and format these next 3 cells so that we don't wind up with another date. So I'm going to click on the first one and drag the cursor down so that all 3 of them are highlighted. And I'm going to right click. We're going to come down here to Format Cells. And we're going to turn these into numbers, and they're going to be rounded to 2 decimal places, and that's just fine. So we'll click OK. Then I'll click away. All right, let's come back in here. Now remember to find the relative frequency. I want to take the frequency 23 and divide it by the total, which was 50, and that gives me 0.46. For notebooks, I'm going to take the frequency 9 and divide it by 50. And that gives me 0.18. And then for the tablets, I'm going to take the frequency 7 and divide it by 50. And that gives me 0.14. And then you know how we had to check for the frequencies. We added this column together to make sure we had the same amount of data in here as the data that we had over here. Well, when I check my relative frequencies, I'm again going to add these columns together, but I'm trying to make sure that they add up to 1, because 1 is the same thing as 100%. When we add all these decimals together, they should add up to 1, because as a percent, they will all add up to 100%. Okay, so remember how we told Excel we're going to do a formula. We put in the equals, and I am adding this column together, so I'm going to type in the word sum, and then I'm going to left click on my 0.22 and drag the cursor down for all the cells I'm going to try and add together. And I'm going to release that. And we'll close the parentheses. Oops, hang on. Let's try that again. All right, we have equals sum. Let's open the parentheses. Now let's left click and drag it down so they'll know, Excel will know what cells we're trying to add together. and release that and close the parentheses and press enter, and I got what I wanted. They add up to 1. Okay, so just this part of the table, the first 2 columns is my frequency distribution. When we add in the relative frequency, now the whole thing becomes a relative frequency distribution.